And this is my case study project on Florida Atlantic University and academic freedom. This presentation, I'm going to go over the background, the problem that arose, key personnel involved in the crisis, the response, theories employed, and recommendations for the next time, which hopefully there won't be one, but there probably will be. So Florida Atlantic University is a public and state institution in Boca Raton, Florida. Currently has about 31,000 students and 1,600 members of the faculty. It's a relatively young university, founded in 1961, and it's a liberal arts institution. They have a $275 million endowment, and full disclosure, I worked there for about 7 years prior to coming to App State. It's a beautiful campus, beautiful part of the country, beautiful part of the state. In addition to the crisis I'm going to discuss, FAU has endured several scandals over its short history. One was the naming of the football stadium after a private prison company. So the mascot is the Owls, so they called it Owlcatraz. There was another controversial exercise that took place in a classroom, which a professor asked students if they wrote 5 letters on a piece of paper and crumpled it up, would it mean anything? And they all said no. And he said, well, what if those 5 letters spelled Jesus? And it sort of changed the tone of the exercise, and a student went to the media claiming that a professor was demanding that students stomp on Jesus. So that was a controversy they endured. And then a decade or two, about 2 decades ago, there was misappropriation of funds when the head of the foundation retired and was granted a red sports car as a parting gift, which was purchased with donated funds. But that's not what we're talking about today. What I'm going to talk about is a tenured professor, associate professor in the communication department named James Tracy. He teaches a course on conspiracy theories and is a bit of a conspiracy theorist himself, claiming that incidents such as the Boston Marathon shootings, the shooting that took place in Charleston, what happened in San Bernardino, those are all conspiracy theories, those are all staged events by the U.S. government to promote gun control. He also contended the same thing about Sandy Hook Elementary massacre was staged by the government. It was a problem because, majority of people, sane, normal thinking people disagree with this, but he cited freedom of speech and academic freedom in maintaining his use of blogs to talk about what he believed to be true, that there's no such thing as Sandy Hook. Unless you're living on a rock, you know that 6 teachers were killed trying to protect 20 students who were murdered by a lone gunman who went into the school where he actually attended himself, and opened fire, killing the majority of these, killing all the students here, 20 of them, 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds. Here's some information about academic freedom. This talks about, professors can teach whatever they want within, rights. They are free from regulation in what they can teach and study and talk about and write and things like that. James Tracy maintained that his blog had nothing to do with the university. It was all on his own time. However, the university took umbrage with the fact that he called himself a Florida Atlantic University professor on his blog. So that was where a lot of the contradictions came in. Personnel that were involved in the crisis were the university president. John Kelly is the current university president. He was not the university president at the time when this incident happened, but he inherited this crisis. David Keon is the general counsel or the main attorney for the university. So he was heavily involved in the crisis and in dealing with this professor. Then on the other side of the coin is the Faculty Senate, which supports academic freedom and freedom of speech and things like that, as does the university. But when it comes to denying that this thing happened and harassing the parents of one of the slain children, that's where they sort of drew the line. The United Faculty of Florida is the statewide faculty senate of sorts that protects professors and their academic freedoms, and went to bat for this professor. Regardless of how sickening his comments were, they maintained that he was able to utilize academic freedom to say what he wanted to about the conspiracies. So what was the response to the crisis? Well, Tracy was eventually fired, but he was not fired for harassing the parents of the slain child. He was not fired for posting on his blog or even his comments. Instead, he was fired for insubordination and circumvention of FAU policies. In other words, the university claimed that he did not follow rules and what they asked him to do, and they had also offered him a 10-day appeal, which he didn't take them up on, so they let him go. There's an article here, or a video there if you want to read about how it went down. You can read that there. This is the official statement from the university. You can see there's one made 10 days prior to his actual firing. There's on the December 16th, he was being notified that he was being terminated and that he had 10 days to appeal. 10 days passed and he did not respond, so therefore his termination was effective as of the 8th. Theory was employed in making this in dealing with this crisis. It had to be decision theory because all the other theories provided too much in the way of other possibilities. The decision theory was employed here because they needed to make a decision that was for the greater good of the institution. The cries from the donors and the public and the parents and the students and most of the faculty was supportive of releasing Tracy from his role, but this was the best theory in dealing with this crisis that could be employed. My recommendations for the university or any university dealing with something like this is to provide a quicker response. Because there was so much legal aspects involved in this case, they couldn't respond quickly. They had to make sure they had their legal ducks in a row. Lanny Davis talked a lot about utilizing law to make sure you're handling the crisis well. But there's so many things they could not disclose because of the dealings with the Faculty Senate, because of the dealings with the state, because of the dealings with First Amendment rights and things like that. The university had to play their cards very close to their chest, which means that they couldn't really say much. They would just give blanket statements of, we support academic freedom, we support our faculty, however, we do support, the families of the victims and things like that. So it was a tough response for them. But in my opinion, they should have been quicker about why they had to say what they had to say. Maybe going into a little bit more about legal explanations for why they were delaying decisions or the decisions that they made. Picking a moral code and sticking to it, I think, is something that we all can struggle with when it comes to rights. We're dealing with the aftermath of the Las Vegas shooting. We all, for those of us who believe in the Constitution, we believe in the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, right? So the university's sort of in the same boat. But I think in this instance, they needed to pick their moral code and stick with it and ride that compass, to where they wanted to go. Supporting academic freedom, I think maybe the university needs to define it a little better, what that does and does allow, whether that allows, professors doing things on their own time, whether they have to fill out forms that talk about other activities they're engaged in, things of that nature. And then I think I would recommend that the Florida Atlantic University cite positive cases of where they've supported professors in the past or supported students in the past or or other moral dilemmas that they've encountered. So those are my recommendations. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions about the case, feel free to email me. It's been a pleasure working with you all this semester, and go Apps!